Did you trim your beard?
Just a scraggly little hair. It's nothing special.
Nothing special?
No,
Maybe you're losing weight. Have you lost weight?
I have.
All right. Looking good, my man.
So thank you. It's not my beard is trim. It's less face. I have less face. How about that?
Less face, yeah.
Yeah. I'm on I'm working myself down in a manageable way. I'm not accelerating. I could turn up the exercise a lot more and get it down faster. However, I want to get it down in a way where it's manageable and I can really understand what's going on. Because I've done that where I cut my eating and exercise and cut the weight, and then I lose the weight, and then I find it somewhere else a different time.
Yeah, change the language. We don't lose weight. We drop it. Drop it and let it go.
Exactly. And
Yeah.
so now I've changed my eating habits, and I'm still exercising the same way. I'll just change my eating habits to work it down.
You know what? Let's go there for a second, because that's a cultural thing. In the Black community, food means a lot different than other communities.
Yes, we do live to eat. You're supposed to eat to live. We live to eat.
Yeah. What's your favorite food?
What used to be my favorite food?
Yeah. You can still indulge every once in a while.
No, I ate it. I ate it, and it was like, oh my gracious. My favorite used to be a bone-in ribeye. And I ate one this past week. It was my anniversary weekend, and my wife, we went out. We
Happy
ate
anniversary. How many years?
34.
Oh my goodness, Emerick. Happy anniversary.
So we went, every day. But Friday was our birthday, and our anniversary was Sunday. So every day we just went to a different area of the state to eat. And I ate that bone-in ribeye, and I kid you not, I felt so heavy. When I got home, I could not get out of the car. I had to sit in the car for a couple of extra minutes because I felt so heavy. It was crazy.
How big was the ribeye?
It was no bigger than, I didn't eat the whole thing. It was a 24 ounce, which is what I usually get. but the bone is included in there. So, you subtract the bone out, they cook it down. It's not the same. But however, prior to me changing my eating habits, I would eat that. I would just minimize my sides. I would eat that. No, I just eat it. Now I've been eating pork, beef, chicken, or turkey for almost 2 months. Right at 2 months.
Yeah, and so your body wasn't ready for that.
I ate it, and it wasn't like I had an adverse reaction, like I got sick or something. I just felt so heavy, and it did not taste as good either.
Interesting.
It didn't taste the way it used to taste. And I looked at my wife, I said, I'm done. I said, I've tested this thing. I ate a little bit of this. I've eaten a little bit of that. It's not something that I require to eat anymore.
Right.
It's just not a part of my diet anymore. So that felt really good to validate the things that I've been doing.
Yeah.
And so I'm down right now, between just changing body composition from exercise and the eating, I'm down like 15 pounds, but I'm down a gradual 15 pounds. It's not like I did something. It's not like I went and worked out every day for 5 days, for 3 hours. It was just normal activity, getting that weight off and just eating more vegetables, things like that. And it's just coming down really naturally. It's a nice progression where
you feeling better?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah.
It's this may sound a little different. I see more clear.
Well, what we eat, anything we ingest, definitely affects every cell in our body. So that makes sense.
I see. I mean, I'm just saying the world looks brighter to me. It's kind of bizarre. I'm like, they're the same eyes. But
yeah, but on a chemical and cellular level, it makes sense. You probably have less inflammation too.
Probably, yeah. I don't have any aches. I've been cutting my sugar back too, but just the other things that come along with the meat, it's real, and this definitely different. It's something I probably should have documented a little bit more.
Yeah.
However, there is a markable difference,
Awesome.
difference. And
Good for you. Blessing of COVID.
Yes. Coming back to that conversation, as you said about eating and dietary. Yeah, we are Black folks. We live to eat, and
I've been listening to Becoming on Audible, Michelle
Yeah.
Obama's book. It's phenomenal, and she went back to when the girls were little and Obama was running. The pediatrician told her that her little girl, Malia, was getting borderline diabetic because of how they were eating at a
Right.
very young age, like I think 5 years old.
Right.
And so she went into the whole, how food shows up sometimes culturally.
Right. Mm-hmm. And it's deep, and it's not something that you really consciously pay attention to, because that's from a cultural perspective. That's the way that things are cooked. That's the way you eat, and that's just the way it's always been. That doesn't necessarily mean you can't alter that and you can't do some other things. And part of it is that it was like the way that you cook and the way that you eat was based on your financial resources. And so you season things a certain way, you cook things a certain way because of your financial resources. See, I'm gonna hit you with something. I don't know if this happened in white households, but in Black households, did you ever have a grease can?
Oh yeah. Are you kidding? I hate to admit this. I have it in my freezer right now. Bacon grease.
Yeah.
Yep.
And so that
I haven't had this for years, but Crisco too, right?
Oh yeah, yeah. But the grease can thing, and I've seen like the whole concept of the grease can. It's like, hey.
Well, the socioeconomic piece. I mean, I grew up we were very poor. We didn't throw anything. We reused everything.
Right.
And we couldn't afford good quality food. Right. Everything was processed, and
so in that space. But see, and that's the thing though. Like, we didn't eat a lot of processed food. It was just the way it was prepared. There wasn't a processed part. The processed part was the least of your
fried and greasy, right?
Exactly. And if it didn't glisten, it wasn't good.
To this day, my favorite meal is still chicken fried steak.
Really?
With mashed potatoes and thick gravy.
Yeah. So, and so, it is a difference. And just getting people to understand, just in the culture, just understanding that you cannot eat. It's not called a slice of cake. It's a hunk of cake. You can't eat that hunk of cake. You got to eat a slice of cake. Everything is done in moderation. And then, culturally growing up, since and some people, it just depends on where I can only say for my household, right? That was that conversation. If it's on your plate, you better eat it all. Don't throw any food away. And I struggle with that, to be quite frank with you. I struggle with that up until recently.
So this is really cool. We've had this, I belong to a health group that Nina Heller runs.
Right.
And she said, if you have that battle, because it's such programming, right? Don't waste anything. If you go out to eat, the minute your dinner plate comes, ask for a box. So you don't even get to fork in the steak. Take half of that steak and already
put it in the box.
Yep.
And so and that's big, because so this is really gonna make you laugh, right? When my friends used to come to my house, we were 4 boys, right? And this like, we would eat food out of like a serving platter almost. Like, the regular plate
was that big?
It was like, it was an oval plate. It was not the round plate. It was an oval plate. And then we would eat all of that food, right? And that's what we did.
Yeah.
right? And so even like I said, until recently, I got myself out of that programming where I had to eat everything that was on my plate. I couldn't waste anything. So it's either going in a box or I'm not taking it, one or the other. And I'm at that place now. And I found once I got to that mindset, what I found myself doing was actually getting to-go boxes. I never got, trust me, I never, to go where? It's to go off of this plate into my stomach. That's the only to go in it. That's the only to go. But again, that's one of those cultural items that, you know, it's just there. And it's like, and I'm being transparent, right? I would go out with my friends sometimes, or I would be over my friend's house, and I would be at my white friend's house, and I would look at their portions. I'm like, how do you eat that portion? That is not enough, right? So it was kind of crazy. And then when I really look at it, that's the amount that you probably should be eating. However, my conditioning was that everything that we did was around food, and we ate well, and we never left the table hungry, and we never left anything on the plate. Right. And that, from a cultural perspective, that's not a good eating program to be on.
Right.
It's just not.
Scott says, eat your cake in moderation, just eat the icing. That's the moderation. I fully agree with you. Buttercream frosting.
I like that. Just the top. Start at the top, and then you're done.
My grandma used to say, eat dessert first, you might choke on dinner.
But you know, there's some cultures with eating dessert first is, I think is, I have a friend of mine told me, said in certain places they eat dessert first and then they eat their meal. I thought that was kind of
good way to go. I might be able to take that one on. All right. So on Monday, I had a guest named Christina. She's our one of our social equity ambassadors in San Diego County. And she lives in an area here called La Jolla. And she shared something.
I know La Jolla. They have Truluck's in La Jolla.
Yes, they have Truluck's in La Jolla. And it's a obviously very, it's a luxury area. It's an enclave.
They have means.
They have means, yes. And she said a couple years ago, she went to CVS there, and some very mean and intoxicated man called her a monkey. This was just a couple years ago.
Right.
And we've had that whole conversation with the unfortunate stuff that happened on the Bold Pivot page around the monkey mind, Bold law. We haven't talked about it. I haven't brought that up to you, but what are your thoughts about that? Because it is just astonishing to me that actually does happen.
Right.
And obviously it does still.
Well, everybody, that's the challenge. That's the challenge with being Black, right? Everybody believes that everybody that's Black in America has the same experience, right? Because we all Black people. So it's America. We all Black people. It's all the same.
And you probably all know each other too, right?
Oh, yeah. But look, we do know each other. You can't tell because guess what? Every time we see each other, we do like this. What's up? So you think we do know each other, but no. And so, a lot of times, America as a whole, they lump all Black people into one category. And the truth is that we all have different experiences living in America, even in the same city, geographically, even the same neighborhood. Like my experiences being Black in America is different than my brother's experience.
Yeah.
Right? Because the truth is we encounter different people at different times that shape and form our opinion of who we are and how we integrate into society and how society should respond to us. And so with that conversation about monkey mind, as for me, I didn't think anything of it. I've been to Bold freaking 13 times, however many, a whole bracket of times. It never dawned on me from that conversation about monkey mind as a negative connotation as me as a Black person being thought of as a monkey. I've never had anybody call me a monkey. So I don't have that visceral response or I'm not traumatized or PTSD from the conversation about monkey. Right. So I deal with it different. However, I can see someone's opinion about monkey mind. However, we also have to step outside of the context of who we are and what our experiences have been. And
Right.
if you take it from the context of ancient ancient historical, I guess it's Buddhist.
Yeah, it was a Buddhist monk who used
Buddhist
it.
monk. Yep. And so that whole thing of monkey mind that's not the context of it.
So the question really becomes, and I get it. I think, right, we have conversations
Right.
because in the absence of conversation, ignorance prevails. Thank you for
Yeah.
that. You'll be getting your t-shirt soon. Where do we say, all right, Pete, we're just being a little too sensitive? Where's the line that
I don't think that anybody has the right to tell somebody they're being too sensitive until you've walked in their shoes and until you understand that this is not that just this one person's perspective. Because let's be real, when President Obama was in office, there were people on the mall with monkey symbols saying, get the monkeys out of the White House. There were all kinds of jokes about monkeys. And so at that space, right, the way people are traumatized around that whole conversation of the context of Black people and monkeys, it's just traumatic for a lot of people. So you don't have the right to tell them that they're being too sensitive, because they can show you documentation time and time again where Americans have called Black folks monkeys. Right. So how do you say that? So how are you being too sensitive? That's not up to you, because that's like saying, and I'm probably stepping over a line somewhere. That's like a male telling a woman, get over being raped. Yep. You have sex anyway, so you had I don't have that right. I can't tell you how you should feel about that. I can't, because that's not me. So right. For somebody else to impose that and say, when are we being too sensitive?
I totally see that parallel. And again, listening to Michelle as I walked this morning, I love listening to this book, and I was crying this morning because the place I was at, she was talking about all the things that were said about her and the girls and Obama as they were leading up to the election. And I remember it, but it wasn't front and center in my memory. And the things she was bringing up, I just went, wow, yeah.
And I was, and for me in that time, I had to get over some things. I was a little damaged in that space.
What do you mean?
I actually went downtown. I was downtown in Washington, D.C., and it was one of the events. I never forget it. It was a Tea Party event that they were having on the mall. And when I physically saw the signs and the things that they were doing, yeah, it changes your perspective.
How?
It changed your perspective because you look at it and say, this is what these people think of me.
So you personalize it.
Yeah, you personalize it, because whatever they were saying about him, they were saying the same thing about me. It was no different. And then and for me, during that time, I was really insulted, particularly being a prior military person, because some of the things that they were saying, I said, and it brings you back, say, and this is a part of our oath, and so anybody in the military know, I'm sworn to defend the Constitution of the United States, to follow the orders of those appointed over me. And at a certain point, I'm prepared in that whole concept of I'm prepared to give my life in its defense. Right? So in that space of me being a military man, I was willing to give the ultimate sacrifice for the freedoms of this country. So this ignorant jack, I'm being political, this ignorant jack behind can carry a sign that even says these things. You see where I'm going with this?
Yep.
And so, it's a totally different context. And it's almost like all of the people that are patriotic, even in this today's society, they talk about MAGMA, Make America Great Again, and they're talking all the whole thing with the kneeling and the Colin Kaepernick and all these patriotic people, particularly those who were never, you're patriotic now at this point in your life, but when you had an opportunity to enroll in the military in some way, shape, or form and be prepared to give your life in their defense, you decided to do something different. And now all of a sudden you're this patriotic person that think the flag and the national anthem is so great. It wasn't great enough for you to enlist or enroll in the military to defend the country. But now it's the greatest thing around. Or you had medical clearance to say you had bone spurs, and that's the reason why you couldn't go in the military. And now all of a sudden America is the greatest place, but it wasn't great enough for you to do a patriotic duty. And I get it, everybody has the right to do whatever they want to do, but don't come back and say all of these things after the fact, because you had your opportunity. And to look lesser on people in this country for any other reason other than what you believe is your ideology is really an insult to all of the people who've served. That's just my opinion. That's my opinion.
That's a really good perspective that I hadn't heard from a military person. Yeah, and thank you for your service.
No.
So
No.
it's the path we're going down there.
I'm supposed to say you're welcome. I have an issue accepting compliments. I just keep moving. And I have to say, yeah, you're welcome. Yeah, okay.
Let it in. Let it in.
Yes.
So going down that path, and I've been a little intentional about avoiding the politics of all of it, right?
Right.
Yet in the next 3 or 4 months, we're not going to be able to avoid politics.
No, ma'am.
So what do you anticipate leading up to November 3rd? And I got to say right now for everybody here, I am not listening to politics or news at all at this point. I have no idea what's going on.
Well, by this point, let me just keep quiet. I don't think the next 4 months, if the next 4 months change your mind one way or another, you probably have other issues.
Yeah, agreed.
If the next 4 months change your mind one way or the other, you probably have issues. Either or, you got issues either supporting the structure or you have issues for not supporting the structure. There's an issue with you if you haven't made up your mind by this point, because the next 3 months really doesn't even matter because we've had a clear indication.
Well, and it's not my question really. Let me phrase a better question. My question isn't about are people's minds going to be changed in the next 3 months. It's what behaviors are we going to see more of? Because I anticipate
expect the unexpected.
We're so polarized, right?
Yeah.
More polarized than I've ever experienced. And I think we'll see the extreme behaviors come from both sides again.
Right. Yeah, and like I said, expect the unexpected. Because I believe that where we are right now, there's different things happening. There's desperation. Desperation is kicking in one place, and being overly optimistic is kicking in another place, and it's always difficult to get the truth when you're at one extreme or the other extreme. And we have two extremes. And so we really don't know what to expect because, again, desperation brings out one component of survival instinct, right? And being overly optimistic brings out another survival instinct.
Yeah. Plus the layer of, everybody being at home and for so long and pent up, and financial instability probably at a greater level.
Yes.
Again, Christina, on Monday we were talking, and she does a lot through the corona, just with corona, in a Black organization that's giving food out, and they've given out something like 25,000 meals in the last couple months because they're, the socioeconomic impact on the Black community is probably greater than most other parts of our community.
And it's like some people say, well, how does that happen? Because, and just so we're clear, the community is a micro community. And the reason why I call it a micro community is because, we call a spade a spade. Black owned businesses are supported primarily by Black people. And if you have a disproportionate of Black people being affected, then it's going to have a disproportionate effect on Black owned businesses, because Black owned businesses are primarily supported by Black people.
Well, in a city like San Diego, the other thing is when you look at the unemployment rate, right, which skyrocketed,
Okay.
most of those jobs were kind of in the service sector.
Exactly.
Which are people of color, not just Black, but Latino. And
right.
It's a disparate impact.
And it changes the whole way that, it just changes the way that we look at things economically. And it doesn't matter. Like for me, I just got a call from one of my tenants in my building who has a daycare. Right. Yeah. And what she said to me, she said, I knew we would have to work out a deal on the rent. I'm real clear that it's a daycare. So you can't have kids in a daycare right now. And so if you have a daycare business, you really don't have a business. Yeah. And her business, what happened the first couple of months was they had first responder money. So first responders had to go to work. So they had to have some kind of daycare. Well, they cut the first responders money. Wow. So a lot of people just couldn't work the daycare the same way. Yeah. So now when the kids are going back to school, they're going back to school 100% virtual. So if you have a daycare, particularly this particular person has a before and after daycare. Well, if they're not going to school, there is no before and there is no after. Right. So they have to change their entire business model to try to figure out a way to hope that it's one that's going to pay income. And then they can only be half occupied, which means they can't have the amount of kids that they had, but then they have to go all day, which means they have to increase their staffing, even to support.
And increase your expenses.
Well, they raise their expenses, which means that I don't know how I'm going to be able to pay all of my rent.
Right.
So now we have to come to a different, and that's not a Black community conversation, but I'm just giving you an idea in this particular case.
Oh no, we're seeing it here too. And I think it's, like you said, though, it's more extreme in the Black community, because the businesses are Black supported and there's less available income for people who are service sector employees. Correct.
And so, that's deep. And I'm like, okay, so now this is affecting me differently. It's been affecting me differently because now I have a building that I'm really going to lose 1/5 of the income from it. Yep. But unfortunately,
we can have that conversation. That's the only financial stressor I have. We own the building for the market center. It's the same thing. When is office space going to be valuable again? Yeah.
And so again, it just comes to a different place. But as far as the community is concerned, it's a different dialogue for the community, for the Black business community, because like I said, it's primarily supported by the community. And that's the thing that's always kind of drove me a different way. It's really the reality of reality of America. And I'd imagine any place. What a lot of people don't really understand, like attracts like. Yep. Right. And it doesn't matter if you go to, and I said, I was a little edgy and some people got scared when I had this conversation in Keller Williams, because I said, why doesn't Keller Williams have ethnic market centers? And they looked at me, they were scared to comment, right? Because everybody scared to comment. It was in my region.
Okay.
It was in my region. And everybody was scared to comment because, it's such a, like you said, how sensitive can you be? What's sensitive is too sensitive. And my point for saying that is that if you want to be real, right? When you go into ethnic communities, there's nobody in that community that the dominant group in that community are those ethnicities, right?
Right.
And so my conversation around that, and just open up mind for a second. If you live in an Hasidic Jewish community, right?
Yep.
What would be wrong with having a small market center in an acidic Jewish community that serviced that community? And somebody said, oh, that would be horrible. You couldn't do that. Yeah. I said, listen, these folks are doing business with, they're the only people that they primarily do business with anyway.
Well, that
So
goes back to our conversation last week, right? I want a black agent. I want a Jewish agent. I mean,
and you're not saying that that's the only people that they serve. However, you're serving that community at a different level. And what made me think of that is I was in New York and I was in a Hasidic Jewish community, right? And it was Friday and everybody, they were out walking. And it took me, I had to get a better understanding that after sundown, that in that community, they
no
walk
technology.
They don't take no technology. And so they have like, and I did not know this, they have physical lines drawn that are I guess it's the ethnic area where they can do whatever they have to do only in that area.
Yep.
Right. And so I was thinking, I was like, what if there was a Keller Williams, and you call it whatever you call it. You put a small Keller Williams with maybe like 25 agents to service that community because they only doing business primarily with each other anyway. That's not to say nobody can go in there.
Right.
But just think of the profit center that would be. I'm just wrapping my brain around this, right?
Yeah. But
that's what happens in America anyway, right? And you said something. You said that about 40% of the agents in your market center are LGBTQ, right?
Right.
The only reason why it's that way is because that's you embrace it, they feel comfortable in that space, and they know that they're safe. Well,
and we're really adjacent to the area that's the gay area.
Okay. Whatever reason, and it's safe, right? Yep. The only reason why we had 98% Black, right? Because it's safe. Do we service all clients? Absolutely, right? And if you go to La Jolla, right? You ain't got a whole lot of Black people walking in La Jolla Market Center. You ain't got a whole lot of different people walking in La Jolla Market Center that aren't a part of that community. Yep. And so it was just one of those conversations. And it was just interesting that nobody would even engage. They didn't want to engage in that conversation with me, right? I thought it was kind of interesting. And this was about 4 years ago. And I was
okay,
like,
so this wasn't now.
No, this wasn't now. I said, people are really uncomfortable having this race conversation. Yeah. People are really, really uncomfortable because they just don't know how to deal with it.
Well, and I think they don't know how to deal with it. I think some people are afraid to make a mistake, cross a line, right. Appear ignorant. The ones that just don't think there's a problem,
right?
Like we don't have to talk. That is the only mindset I can't understand yet.
Right.
I can understand somebody being scared to have the conversation because you.
Right. But yeah, but to say we don't have to talk about it, I haven't had that one happen to me. But I probably would have a little more aggressive conversation if that was said to me. We don't have to have this conversation.
Last Friday, Regina Polk was on. That was our guest here.
Okay.
And I love that you guys are working together. And I would love to be in the room, like physically in a room with both of you, because your demeanors are so different.
Right.
And yet she got it. You could see in her eyes a couple times. She got a little intense.
Right.
I bet there's been some.
I probably have helped her get a little more intense. Because because I just believe that no matter what room you're in, be yourself. Yeah. Be your authentic self. And I get it. For me personally, I know that I have to tone it down some. It's not gonna dissipate in that room. Let me put it that way. And so, because it's always it becomes a challenge. The conversation becomes a challenge. However, it's a required conversation. Now it's a lot more apparent that it's a more required conversation. Yeah. And so we just have to be there. And just, I think the biggest part is we have to respect each other. That's where the challenge comes in. When
Respect and be curious.
right.
You know, just be curious. And recognize you can't fully understand my perspective, and I can't fully understand yours, but we can get close to it through the conversation.
Right. Mm-hmm. Now, and so, and this is interesting, and for me, I do a really great job at understanding the perspectives that I don't agree with. And I believe that, and this is a conversation for us to really, really have. Part of that is because I've had so much exposure.
Mm-hmm.
And that's key. We don't understand, and we can't even logically think of how people come from those positions when we haven't had exposure and we haven't had enough conversation. And I believe that over my lifetime, I've had enough conversation, enough exposure to actually be able to understand where people are coming from. I can agree to disagree,
Sure.
And I can understand why they feel that way. That doesn't mean I have to agree with them.
Right.
But and then don't get me wrong, it's difficult. It's difficult. However, I can understand where they come from. Like if people will say, "Oh, I love the Confederate flag. This is heritage. This is not." I can understand where they're coming from.
Yeah.
And however,
you don't have to agree.
I don't have to agree. Yeah. However, when you become enlightened, I would hope that somewhere in your brain, the fact that you're operating under faulty logic will kick in.
Well, and that's only if they're open, right? That's where the curiosity has to come in.
I've
been triggered a couple times in the last few weeks where people go, "Well, you're intolerant." Me, I'm like, right. No, I'm just intolerant of intolerance.
Right.
Right. I don't have to tolerate your hateful ways. If you're holding on to thoughts, not willing to be curious, that are hurting other people, I don't have to be okay with that.
Here's the deal. You get a pass and a not pass, right? Being a gay woman, a white gay woman, you get a pass on being white, right?
Yep.
You get a minimal pass on being a gay white woman, right? But you will never get the pass. Yeah, you get the better pass than a gay white male would get.
Oh, for sure. For sure.
And I was trying to be diplomatic. I was about to say something. That may have been edgy, inappropriate. No, I'm just going to say it.
Say it. What are you holding back for?
Okay, the white heterosexual male can imagine two women getting together.
There's a whole industry.
Exactly. But you can't imagine. They couldn't imagine two men getting together. So right. It becomes a more visceral of it, and I think I believe and this is just me. I believe part of that is male insecurity, because we are insecure as men, yeah. And the sooner we can come to the fact of admitting that we have insecurities because machoism is machoism, the better off we'll be in that space.
Yeah.
But again, you would even, matter of fact, they're having this conversation with you and not even realizing that a lot of people who feel that way, they feel the same way about gay people, but they don't view you as being gay because you're with another woman and they want to be with a woman. So at least y'all have something in common.
Well, there's that. I think, that's a whole different conversation. I can't, there's a level of misogyny, right? Gay men have it tough because they're looked at as weaker or effeminate. And I think heterosexual men, sometimes you said insecurity. For some reason, a lot of heterosexual men think every gay man's after him.
Right. That's your personal insecurity.
Yeah.
I remember, and we like all over the place, but I remember when I was younger, like wearing a pink shirt. Oh my gracious. Yep. Wearing a pink shirt. I can't believe you're wearing a pink shirt. I said, I have no question about my masculinity. You do.
Yeah.
You have security issues.
Well, the same thing with your bow ties, man. You look like a dandy.
But but that's the way people are. And so those people who feel that way in that segment then there's something else in their bias that could trigger other things.
Yeah.
You know, so that's why you could have that conversation where people could, they would even say that to you, where they would never say that to, they would never have that exact same conversation to a gay white male probably.
Right. It's interesting. We have an agent that is transgender, and we had a great conversation this last week. And again, if you're curious, you get to understand somewhat another perspective. And I'm just grateful for all, no matter what has happened to get us here, I'm grateful we're here. So we all get to learn and appreciate each other so much more. Right.
And so, you know, and again, we moving from the black white issues because even it's all it's not the same, but it's kind of sort of incorporated into the same.
Well, I think it's all symptomatic, right? So your phrase, in the absence of conversation, ignorance prevails.
Yes.
And when ignorance prevails, most of the time as humans, we have fear, we have biases, because we can't possibly understand it, right?
You're right.
Unless we talk.
Because again, it comes back to socialization in America. And I say this all the time, you know, socialization in America forces people to have biases if that's their only exposure. Yeah. Did I ever tell you the story about when I was in the military, when I was my first experience with white people in the military?
You've told us a couple. Go ahead.
Did I tell you about the guy from Upper Wisconsin? Okay, let me tell you.
Okay.
I was in basic training, right? And like all my life, I lived in a Black community. I may have had 4 or 5 white teachers in my whole academic career going through 1st through 12th grade. And so I'm in basic training, and this guy in the bunk next to me keeps staring at me. And I was like, this dude's kidding. And so as we got there, he just kept looking at me for a couple of weeks. And then one day I asked him, I was like, his name was Gorshi. I will never forget that. His name was Gorshi. He was like from Upper Wisconsin. He was like Wisconsin, Canada type. He was like,
he was really white.
He was, yeah. And I mean, it was crazy because, and I asked him, I said, man, why do you say Gorshi? I said, why do you keep staring at me? He said, because when I grew up, I was told Black people had tails and I was looking for your tail.
What?
I was like, whoa. Because he had never seen Black people before.
Wow. So where did that conversation go?
I was like, now you realize we don't have tails. Are we okay now?
Wow.
I was 17 years old. And so that was like a different, I will never forget that. I remember, I'm gonna tell you, my memory is like horrible. I remember where my bunk was in that bay. I remember where I slept. I remember where his bed was. I remember the whole scenario behind that. It's like a vivid memory of that whole exchange.
And you had to serve with him, right? So
I didn't have to serve. We were in basic training, so you're not really serving with him. You like being abused together. So we were all abused. we were all traumatized from being abused, from coming from wherever we came from, thrown into this mix. Yeah. But you know, it was just
wow.
So I had an experience in 1992. It was my first year out of college, and I was working for JCPenney's as a buyer, and we had to go to corporate Texas, right, for our first new hire meeting. And they picked us all up in whatever shuttle. So there was just, our shuttle was full of people going to the corporate office, and we pull up and there is a Black bellhop at the hotel. And a guy sitting next to me was from Minnesota. And he said, oh my God, a real live nigger. He had never, in 1992, never met somebody of color. And
didn't think that was inappropriate to say.
But he didn't it wasn't in his world. It was incredibly appropriate. I mean, like, that's all he knew. But the gentleman had such grace. He came right over to him and he stuck out his arm and he said, touch it, rub my arm. And so the guy reached out, rubbed his arm, and then the gentleman took his fingers and licked his fingers, and he rubbed his own skin. He said, look, it doesn't come off. I'm just like you. And it was this exchange that, you know, I'm from Southern California and I'm like, oh, this is gonna go bad. And it was such an incredible example of grace. And for like, by the time we left 4 days later, the bellhop and this gentleman from Minnesota, every time they saw each other, they hugged, high-fived, have a great day, see you at the end of the day, how you doing? Like, it just demonstrated to me how, even though this guy grew up in this culture and environment where that was it, one interaction can completely change his world. And I just have to hope that still to this day, he is changing other people's world because of that experience he had. That stuck with me. Like, Emerick, you were saying, like, you remember that for the rest of your life. Like, you can just instantly go to that point.
Oh my gracious.
I can go right to that point of sitting in that bus right next to this guy. And I still feel the tingle. Like, I just feel it because it was so like, oh. But I'll never forget the grace that that man showed. I'll never forget that. It was incredible.
That is, it gave me goosebumps. That's an awesome story. And what a strength of character to be able to, I call it, hold that space for education for that guy.
Now see, and that's where I was saying that, you know, every Black person's walk in America is different. Had that been somebody a little different, they might have snatched him out the van. They may have snatched him out the van and just had to find a new job.
Yeah.
You know, and again, it's just that I think that we all suffer from a certain amount of post-traumatic stress disorder, PTSD. Yeah, PTSD. We just all suffer differently. We just do. And I'm using a Black voice right now. Okay. However, whoever you are, wherever you have been marginalized, wherever you have been mentally damaged, we all suffer from some type of PTSD about something in our lives. Yep. And it's just a matter of to what magnitude it affects you.
It's interesting. I teach career visioning, and one of the concepts I teach in there is that we all have damage, and part of bringing people into your world is figuring out if your damage matches up with theirs.
Exactly. And you know, it's funny that you say that. I say that too. I said we have all been socialized in America. We all suffer from damage. And I've said this before. Anybody, and I say this way, and it could cross all kinds of lines. I said any Black person in America that is, I used to say 35, now I say 30. Any Black person in America that's over 30, 35 should see a therapist.
How about every person?
That's what I said. It can go across the board. But see, and that's every person across the board. There's some special trauma that we have, right? Yeah. And there's some special trauma that we have because we have to live in this society, understanding all of the social ills that happen into and around us. And then we have to act like that's normal. Yeah. That's a psychological disorder, yeah. Right? It just is, because you have to normalize what's not normal.
Yeah. You have to. I mean, it's just what we have to do to stay sane. You can't be incongruent for too long.
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. And those who don't normalize it typically have issues dealing with society as a whole. And I didn't say you have to accept it, but you have to find a way to normalize it in your mind to be able to keep moving beyond that, because natural instinct is to, you know, release that insatiable propensity to choke the shit out of somebody a lot of times. So you know,
It's not just me.
no, you got to normalize it someplace, because you know you can only take but so much mentally, right?
I'm telling you right now, on the other side of this, I ordered 2 punching bags this week.
Really? Wow. 2 punching bags?
You know, a little speed bag and a heavy bag. There's some anger that needs to be put somewhere.
That's interesting. Yeah. But and see,
So I don't choke the shit out of somebody.
So that's your coping that's going to be your coping mechanism at this point.
Yep.
Where it comes to a place where, you know, if you don't have some type of coping mechanism, you will lose yourself.
Oh yeah.
And you will lose your sanity to a certain degree and dealing with it. Now, this is your place at 46. Imagine if you had to do that.
Hey, 45.
45, my fault. At 45. So imagine if that was your existence since you were probably.
Well, so here's what's interesting, and we're not going to go in depth what has made me angry this last couple of weeks.
Okay.
But what it's triggered my PTSD, which is why
there we go. The trigger.
And it's interesting, at 45, I thought I had let go of a lot of that. And I realized I've worked on it, and I've gotten to a point of normalizing it,
right,
until it's re-triggered.
And that's what happens. And so your previous coping mechanisms are not working the same.
So I get it. Having that level of anger this last week, I get why people were rioting. I would be rioting too.
Right. So and again, you can afford a punching bag. So you can afford a punching bag and a speed bag.
I actually grew up in a very ethnic area, and learned to box in Sugar Ray Leonard's gym.
Really? Okay. So you probably could do some damage then. Is that what you
I can.
And so that's the key that most people don't really understand, is that, you know, the coping mechanisms that have become natural for us.
Yeah. And
you can't really understand why certain people do certain things. That's because you've never walked through what certain people have walked through, and you really don't understand the level or the complexity of what PTSD represents to them in their space.
Yeah.
Because your coping mechanisms are just different.
Yep.
But we don't know. And the other thing, you don't know where the powder keg is. You don't know when things are going to explode. And like for you, you recognize that you were exploding. So because of your conscious awareness and your previous training and background, you understand that you had to release that in a different way other than the way that you could release it. Let me put it that way.
Well, yeah. And I will say, and some of my agents know this, if I don't release that, I have issues with blackout anger. Right?
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah,
so we have to constantly work on the awareness of it. Again, I'm so grateful for the way things have lined up this year to pull layers back and go, okay, there's still work to do on me.
See, if you have blackout anger, right? They're going to say, oh, she's having issues coping today. If I have blackout anger.
Yeah. You're going to jail.
I'm going to jail. And it's a different conversation. Yeah. Or even if I don't go to jail, it's a different conversation about how people perceive me if I have blackout anger.
Yeah.
You see where I'm going with this?
Oh, I totally see. That's why I said that a couple weeks ago. That is so unfair. The level of self-control you have to constantly have, it sounds like hyperbolic, but it's not. You have to have self-control so you live.
Right. And that's again, that's the coping mechanism. That's normalizing abnormal situations.
Yeah. Yep. What a journey.
It is, you know what? And I was thinking about this last week, and I think I said this to somebody this morning. Matter of fact, a friend of mine called me this morning, and people asked me, how you doing? I'm doing great. I said, you know what? I'm living a dream. And somebody asked me, said, why do you say I'm living a dream? I said, well, I live in America. Like it or not, I'm a Black man in America, and I don't have financial issues. That's a dream in and of itself. I have better than first world problems in America. So if I have better than first world problems in America, I'm living a dream.
Absolutely.
I'm living a dream. So for me, until if something changes, I'll still be living a dream.
Well, and that's interesting. On Friday, one of our agents, Marwan, is going to be my guest on here. And so everybody who's here, Marwan is a gay man who's from Iraq.
Okay.
And I haven't heard his perspective yet. That's what we're going to talk about.
Okay.
But I think what we're going to hear is even as a Black man or a gay man in America, it's a hell of a lot better than it is over there.
Right.
So we sometimes forget, that we are so imperfect and so broken in so many ways, but we all are living the dream.
Yeah, no question. I would take this dream as opposed to getting on a boat and going to some other country.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you, sir.
Yes, man.
My Wednesday mornings with you.
I love this. This is, it does something. It's somebody asked me, said, why do you do these different sessions with you? I said, there's a couple things. One, you helping other people grow, and two, it's therapeutic for you because it gives you a better understanding of who you are. And three, it's just great people getting together and sharing, which is a gift in and of itself.
And super grateful for Stephanie sharing that story. That was awesome.
Oh, yeah. When she said that, even though I had said my other story, it just took me back to that place again when she said that, because that was one of the most awkward moments I've ever had in my life, right there.
I can't even imagine. Yeah.
So,
all right.
now the rest of the world can know we really don't have tails.
No tail? Oh,
no tail. Oh no, no tail.
Oh man.
Thank you.
Thank you. Love you big time.
Yes, love you too. I saw Mo picked up something. Did you see what she made a post last week? You put on, I think you had her in, you made a comment and you talked to her about our conversation. She said she went back and looked at the tape.
She did. She went back and she watched our last Wednesday morning. I had a great conversation with her for about an hour, actually. And what I love, it's just who she always has been. She's open and curious.
Right.
And yeah, she said she watched the one last week. She's going to watch more of them. She may jump on here when she can live because she really wants to learn. So,
hey,
that's what we're all doing.
That's what we do. Look,
you should send her an email. Say we don't have tails.
You know what? I don't do it. I will do it. Did you watch Wednesday session with Ashely? If not, I just want you to know we don't have tails.
I did tell her, I said, if you do come on, just beware that sometimes our language gets a little colorful. So just excuse us for that.
Disclosure made.
Yep.
All right, dear. Thank you
so
much. Thank you. And everybody, I can't wait till this is over. I want to come to your market center and
likewise
do it so bad. Oh my gracious.
Well, we're going to do it. We're going to do it.
First opportunity. I'm gonna be riding down, what is it, A1A? That's A1A is in Florida, Route 1. Everybody's got a Route 1 that runs up and down the coast.
Yep. Yeah. That's
it. A1A is in Florida, and Route 1 is in California.
Right on the coast, all the way.
I've done it before. All right, man. We'll talk.
Take care.
Everybody.
Have a great week.
All right, you too.